Dusty Maid gets shoved by Millionaire while trying to help him carry groceries. But when she gets up, she does something he didn't expect. Comment and rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scorching afternoon sun beat down on the asphalt of the parking lot as the 30-year-old cleaning lady adjusted her faded uniform for what felt like the 100th time that day. Her calloused hands gripped the mop tightly, as if that object were her only anchor in a world that insisted on reminding her of her place. Sweat trickled down her forehead as she methodically cleaned every inch of the floor between the luxury cars, ignoring the contemptuous glances of the shoppers passing by. It had been another exhausting day at the upscale grocery store in the big city. 16 hours of non-stop work, being humiliated by supervisors who earned in a week what she made in a month. But she couldn't complain, not when she had a 4-year-old daughter waiting at home, with that angelic smile that made all the suffering worthwhile. The little girl had arrived prematurely and fragile, weighing just 4 pounds. Since then, every cold turned into a battle. Every fever was a nightmare that kept the mother awake. The doctors at the free clinic always said the same thing: it's just a bug, it'll pass. But the cleaning lady knew that her daughter needed more care, medicine that cost the equivalent of a week's pay. That's when she heard the metallic clatter of keys falling to the ground. She turned and saw a man impeccably dressed, in a suit that probably cost more than she earned in 6 months. The 30-year-old millionaire struggled to balance dozens of grocery bags while desperately searching for something in the pockets of his Italian pants. Without hesitation, the cleaning lady approached. She had been raised to help, even when nobody helped her. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" she said in a soft voice, bending down to pick up the keys that gleamed near the tire of an imported car. What happened next would change their lives forever. The shove came with enough force to knock her onto the hot asphalt. The bags scattered across the parking lot as the millionaire shouted words that echoed between the cars. "You thief! You were trying to steal my keys!" His aristocratic voice carried a disproportionate rage, as if he had been personally offended by the simple existence of that woman. The cleaning lady felt her knee scrape on the rough concrete, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation that burned in her chest. Security guards began to approach quickly, their expressions already showing that they had come to their own conclusions about who was to blame in that situation. With a dignity that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her soul, she slowly got up. She brushed the dust off her torn clothes and did something that left everyone perplexed. She walked to where the keys had landed and handed them to the millionaire without saying a word. "They were right there, sir," she murmured softly, avoiding his gaze. When he automatically reached out to take the keys, she saw something that made him hesitate. There was no anger in her eyes, just a tired sadness that seemed too old for someone her age. But the cleaning lady had already turned away, returning to her work as if nothing had happened. She didn't offer apologies she didn't owe, didn't beg for understanding she knew wouldn't come. She simply dipped the mop in the bucket and continued cleaning, while the millionaire stood there watching that scene with a strange feeling growing in his chest. In the days that followed, he couldn't get that image out of his head. During important meetings in his office on the top floor of the city's most imposing skyscraper, his mind constantly returned to that moment. He had built an empire based on the premise that everyone had a price, but that woman had refused even a thank you. 3 weeks later, when he returned to the grocery store for a purchase that he could have sent any employee to make, he discovered that the cleaning lady had disappeared. The supervisor, a middle-aged woman with small, envious eyes, told him with obvious satisfaction that the employee had been fired the same night as the incident. "We caught her stealing cleaning supplies," she lied shamelessly, savoring every word. "These people think they can do whatever they want just because they work here." The millionaire felt something strange twist in his stomach. For the first time in years, the word guilt crossed his privileged mind. That night, alone in his silent mansion, he found himself thinking about the cleaning lady's little daughter, wondering if she had enough food at home. The obsession began as an annoying whisper in his mind, but quickly turned into an urgent need to find the cleaning lady. The millionaire hired the best private investigators in the city, discreet men who knew how to search every forgotten corner of the city without asking questions. His net worth allowed him to buy any information, but that woman seemed to have dissolved into thin air. For 2 endless months, the investigators scoured the outskirts of town, slums forgotten by the government, and tenements where people lived like ghosts. The millionaire followed each report with an anxiety he had never experienced, not even during his first stock market investments. His fortune had been built by calculating risks and predicting market movements, but finding a specific person in the urban sprawl was a completely different game. It was one of the investigators, a skinny 50-year-old man with scars on his face, who finally brought news. "We found her, boss. You're not going to like what you see." His words carried a weight that made the millionaire's stomach clench. The laundromat was located on a narrow street where the sun barely managed to penetrate between the dilapidated buildings. The smell of soap mixed with mildew hung in the air as old machines worked at a constant, noisy rhythm. At the back of the establishment, through a peeling door, was a tiny room that barely fit a single bed and a 2-burner stove. The cleaning lady was bent over a pile of clothes, hand-sewing with precise and quick movements. Her hands, even more callous than before, worked non-stop, even when she coughed dryly, a cough that betrayed sleepless nights and inadequate food. Next to her, on the cold cement floor, the 4-year-old girl played with dolls made of scraps of fabric, her crystalline laughter contrasting with the harshness of that environment. The millionaire watched for hours from a strategic position on the street, hidden behind his car with tinted windows. He saw when the cleaning lady stopped sewing to open a can of sardines that would be dinner for the 2 of them. He saw when she divided the contents, giving most of it to her daughter and pretending to be satisfied with the leftovers. He saw when the girl asked if she could have a little more and the mother replied that she had already eaten too much. The next morning, he returned, and the next, and the next. It became a morbid ritual to watch their routine. The cleaning lady woke up at 5 in the morning, left her daughter still asleep, and went to work at the laundromat until 6 in the evening. Then she went home, prepared a simple dinner, and spent the next 6 hours sewing clothes for outside clients, earning pennies per piece. The little girl never complained of hunger, never asked for expensive toys. She just stayed there, playing with her imagination and patiently waiting for her mother to have time for a conversation or a hug. The owner of the laundromat was a kind 60-year-old man who treated the cleaning lady with genuine respect. Unlike her previous bosses, he never humiliated her or questioned her decisions. He paid her promptly the little he could and always asked about the girl's health. He was the only one who seemed to see the humanity of that woman, and that made the millionaire feel an even deeper shame. One afternoon, gathering all the courage he could find, the millionaire headed to the laundromat. He had rehearsed that moment hundreds of times, preparing words that sounded sincere without seeming condescending. When the cleaning lady saw him standing in the doorway, her eyes widened in surprise, but not in fear. "I came to offer you a job," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "In my house, as a housekeeper. The salary would be generous." The words came out rushed, as if he were a nervous teenager asking for a first date. The answer came quickly and sharply like a blade. "I don't need your pity." Her voice carried a dignity that cut deeper than any business deal lost on Wall Street, especially not from someone who humiliated me when I was just trying to help. The millionaire felt the ground open up beneath his feet. He had imagined several possible reactions, but not that categorical refusal. I wanted to apologize for what happened. It was a terrible misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" The cleaning lady stopped folding clothes and looked directly at him. "You pushed me to the ground and called me a thief because I wanted to help. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That's who you really are." The words echoed in the stuffy environment of the laundromat. The millionaire opened his mouth to defend himself, but found no arguments. She was right, and they both knew it. "Please," he insisted, his voice almost breaking, "let me make up for what I did." "You want to feel better about yourself," she replied, returning to work. "But I'm not your redemption. I'm not a charity project to ease your heavy conscience." Defeated, the millionaire left the laundromat with the feeling of having been stripped of all his social masks. For the first time in his life, his money hadn't bought what he wanted. His fortune, his investments, his profitable applications, none of that mattered to that woman who managed to maintain her dignity, even in misery. But something inside him had changed irrevocably. He could no longer return to the normal routine of business and profits. He began to frequent the laundromat as a regular customer, bringing clothes that didn't even need to be washed, just to observe from afar how she worked. He never tried to talk again, just watched, trying to understand how someone could maintain so much strength in the face of so much suffering. For 4 long months, the millionaire became a silent presence in the laundromat. He always arrived at the same time, with clothes that clearly didn't need cleaning, and watched discreetly while pretending to read business magazines. He witnessed scenes that would mark his memory forever. The cleaning lady refusing indecent proposals from drunk men who confused her poverty with availability, facing the contempt of wealthy clients who treated her as if she were invisible, enduring the cruel jokes of elegant women who laughed at her patched-up clothes. But what impressed him most was how she maintained a genuine smile for her daughter every night. No matter how exhausted she was, she always found the energy to tell an invented story or to play for a few minutes before returning to her nightly sewing work. The little girl had adapted to that routine with a maturity disturbing for her 4 years, helping to fold small clothes and organizing the scraps by color as if it were a game. The millionaire watched when the old sewing machine began to malfunction, making the cleaning lady lose precious hours trying to fix it with pieces of wire and tape. He saw when she had to work until 3 in the morning to make up for lost time, and how her eyes became swollen and red the next day. He wanted to buy her a new machine, but he knew he would be rejected again. It was during a particularly cold night that the tragedy was announced. The girl began to cough strangely, a dry cough that seemed to come from the depths of her chest. The cleaning lady, already accustomed to her daughter's constant colds, prepared the usual homemade tea and gave her the cheap syrup bought at the neighborhood drugstore. But this time it was different. The fever arrived in the middle of the night like a silent invader. First there were just a few degrees above normal, then it quickly rose to alarming levels. The cleaning lady spent the whole night applying cold compresses and giving warm baths, but nothing worked. When the thermometer read 104 degrees Fahrenheit, she knew she needed urgent medical help. The nearest clinic had a line that stretched along the sidewalk. Desperate mothers held crying children, elderly people leaned on improvised canes, and the smell of disinfectant mixed with human sweat created a suffocating atmosphere. When she was finally seen, after 6 hours of waiting, the tired doctor quickly examined the girl and said the words she had already heard so many times. "It's just a virus. It will pass in a few days." But it didn't pass. The fever persisted, now accompanied by a gasping breath that made the child's small chest rise and fall with difficulty. The cleaning lady returned to the clinic the next day and the next, always hearing the same answer: "Patience. These things take time." When she suggested that perhaps a more detailed examination was needed, the doctor looked at her irritably. "Do you think you know more than I do?" It was on the 5th day that the girl fainted in her mother's arms. The cleaning lady was sewing when she heard a thud. The child had fallen from the small chair where she was playing and couldn't get up. Her lips were pale, almost bluish, and she mumbled disjointed words as if she were delirious. The nearest private hospital was only 15 minutes away by bus, but it might as well have been on another planet. The cleaning lady knew that she didn't have enough money even for the initial consultation, much less for the tests that an emergency of that type would require. Desperate, she ran to the closet where she kept her savings, crumpled bills and coins, carefully counted over months. It wasn't even a tenth of what she would need. That same night, she sold the sewing machine to a junkyard for half its real value. It was her only source of extra income, the tool that allowed her to earn a few cents sewing for outside clients. She also sold the small television she had managed to buy after 2 years of saving, the only good shoes she owned, and even the simple wedding band she had worn since she got married, before her husband left and never came back. But it still wasn't enough. The amount needed to admit her daughter to the private hospital seemed like an impossible mountain to climb for someone earning minimum wage. The cleaning lady found herself facing an abyss, watching her daughter wither away at the inefficient free clinic, or accepting that she simply didn't have the resources to save her. It was then that the kind owner of the laundromat called her for a private conversation. His hands trembled as he handed her a brown envelope. "Someone left this here for you," he said in a soft voice. "Asked me to keep it a complete secret who it was." Inside the envelope was enough money to cover all the hospital expenses, with one condition, that she never find out who had made the donation. The cleaning lady looked at the kind gentleman with tears in her eyes, immediately suspecting the origin of that help. "It was him, wasn't it?" she asked, referring to the millionaire who constantly appeared at the laundromat. The man averted his gaze, respecting the confidentiality agreement he had made. "I can't say, but I know that whoever did this really cares about you too." The cleaning lady stood still for long minutes, looking at the money as if it could burn her. Her dignity screamed for her to refuse, to find another way, not to accept charity from someone who had humiliated her. But when she looked at her daughter, so small and fragile in her arms, she felt she had no choice. That dawn, carrying the almost unconscious child, she rushed to the hospital where she found a full medical team waiting for them. Everything had been prepared in advance, from the paperwork to the private room. For the first time in days, someone treated her daughter as a priority, not as just another number in the endless line of the public system. For 2 endless weeks, the cleaning lady didn't leave her daughter's bedside. She slept in the uncomfortable chair, ate only the leftovers that her daughter couldn't finish, and watched every movement of the doctors with the intensity of someone who knows they are living the most crucial moment of their life. The girl was connected to machines that emitted constant beeps, reminding everyone that that small life hung by a very thin thread. The millionaire appeared at the hospital every day, but always kept his distance. He stayed in the hallway, watching through the glass windows, seeing the unconditional love of that mother manifest in every gesture. When she fell asleep exhausted in the chair, he discreetly asked the nurses to cover her with a blanket. When he saw that she hadn't eaten anything all day, he left sandwiches on the table without ever revealing his identity. During those long hospital vigils, the millionaire found himself confronting truths about himself that he had avoided his entire life. His fortune, built through calculated investments and cold deals, seemed insignificant in the face of the pure love he witnessed in that room. All his wealth accumulated over the years wasn't worth a fraction of what that woman was willing to sacrifice for her daughter. On the 10th day, when the doctors finally confirmed that the child was out of danger, something extraordinary happened. The girl opened her eyes and smiled, a weak but genuine smile that illuminated the entire sterile room. The cleaning lady cried for the first time since it had all begun, tears of relief mixed with infinite gratitude. It was at that moment that she made a decision that would surprise everyone. After confirming with the kind man from the laundromat that her suspicions were correct about the identity of the anonymous benefactor, the cleaning lady did something that nobody expected. She headed to the imposing skyscraper in the downtown area. The building was a demonstration of power and wealth, with marble lobbies and silent elevators that took her to the top floor. When she arrived at the company's reception, with her simple clothes contrasting with the luxury around her, the secretary looked at her with evident disdain. "I have a personal matter to discuss with him," said the cleaning lady, maintaining the dignity that had always characterized her. "He doesn't receive people without an appointment," replied the secretary with contempt. "And he certainly doesn't receive people like you." But the millionaire, who had seen the movement through the security cameras, appeared personally in the lobby. When he saw the cleaning lady there, standing with the same erect posture as always, he felt his heart accelerate in a way that not even the biggest deals on Wall Street could provoke. "I need to talk to you," she said, without beating around the bush. "It's about what you did for my daughter." He led her to his office, an environment that reflected decades of financial success. Expensive paintings, imported furniture, and a panoramic view of the city that used to remind him daily of everything he had achieved. But at that moment, none of that seemed important. "I didn't come to thank you," she began, surprising him. "I came to propose a deal." The millionaire looked at her confused, trying to understand where that conversation would lead. "I want to work for you until I pay back every penny you spent on my daughter's treatment," she continued, with a determination that cut through the air. "I don't accept charity from anyone, not even from the one who saved my daughter. My dignity doesn't allow me to owe favors." The proposal hit him like a punch to the gut. He had imagined many possible scenarios for that meeting, but never that one. "You don't owe me anything," he murmured, genuinely touched by that woman's unwavering integrity. "Yes, I do," she replied firmly. "And I will pay, even if it takes years." The millionaire was silent for long minutes, processing what he had heard. Finally, an idea began to form in his mind, not a solution born of guilt or pity, but of a genuine recognition of the value of that extraordinary person standing before him. "I have a counter-proposal," he said slowly. "I'm starting a social project in the underprivileged area. I need someone to manage it, someone who really understands what people go through there, someone who has lived the difficulties we intend to alleviate." The cleaning lady looked at him suspiciously. "I don't want your charity projects." "It's not charity," he replied quickly. "It's work, real work with real responsibilities and a fair salary. You would use your life experience to help other women in similar situations. You would be paid for the service provided, not for my guilt." For the first time since she had entered that office, she hesitated. She could feel that there was sincerity in that proposal, something different from all previous attempts to help her. "What kind of project?" she asked cautiously. "A support center," he explained, and for the first time in months his words sounded natural, not rehearsed. "Vocational training, daycare for the children, legal guidance, things that you know make a difference because you needed them." During the next 6 months, the cleaning lady transformed that initial idea into something much bigger than the millionaire had imagined. The center became a point of reference in the community, offering not only practical services, but real hope for dozens of families. She worked with the same dedication she had always shown, but now with adequate resources and the satisfaction of seeing concrete results. The millionaire, in turn, discovered a purpose that his financial investments had never given him. He actively participated in the project, not as a distant benefactor, but as someone who had finally understood that true wealth was not in his profitable investments, but in the ability to make a difference in people's lives. The great final twist came when the envious supervisor who had fired the cleaning lady unjustly appeared at the center. She was unemployed, desperate, and humiliated after being caught systematically stealing from the grocery store where she worked. With tears in her eyes, she asked for help from the same woman she had slandered months before. The cleaning lady looked at that woman who had caused so much suffering in her life, and everyone waited to see how she would react. But her response demonstrated a greatness that not even the millionaire, even after months of living with her, imagined possible. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said simply, reaching out to help the one who had brought her down. At that moment, the millionaire finally understood that the shove he had given in that parking lot had not only been the beginning of the cleaning lady's redemption, but of his own salvation. It had been necessary to humiliate someone so worthy for him to see his own pettiness and choose to be a better person. Years later, when the little girl grew up healthy and happy in the center that became a second home for so many families, the cleaning lady and the millionaire maintained a partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose. They proved that redemption is possible when we acknowledge our mistakes and choose to act differently, and that sometimes the greatest treasure we can find is not kept in locked vaults, but in the silent courage of those who get up after each fall and still find the strength to reach out to others. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story, giving it a score from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.